Here. Today we're going to be doing Unit 8 Learning Target 6 notes. So we're going to be talking about adding and subtracting radical expressions, this time with a little extra step from our previous note sheet. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at what this is going to look like. So when we take a look at 40, okay, so we want to break down 40. Remember how we did this earlier on in the unit? Well, 40 I can break down to 4 and 10. And 4 breaks down to 2 and 2, and 10 breaks down to 5 and 2. So then when we go underneath the radical, we're going to have the square root of 2 times 2 times 2 times 5. So then I notice I have one pair of 2's that I can take out. So I'm going to take out that pair of 2's, and left underneath the radical is 2 times 5, which is 10. So 2 times the square root of 10 is our answer for number 1. Now let's take a look at number 2. I don't necessarily instantly know what goes into 128. Well, I know that 4 divides 128. So what I did is I took 128 and I divided it by 4. And then I got 4 and 32. Well, 32 I can break down to 4 and 8. And each of these 4's I can break down into 2 and 2. And then 8 I can break down to 4 and 2. And then once I break down that, I can break down the 4 into 2 and 2. So now I'm going to write everything underneath my radical. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 2's that go underneath the radical. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write out all of those 7 2's. Give it a second for it to catch up here. So then I'm going to have 1, 2, 3. So I have 3 pairs of 2's. So I'm going to be multiplying those on the outside. And then left underneath the radical is 2. Well, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, and then left underneath the radical is 2. So I have 8 square root of 2 as your final answer for number 2. Next, let's take a look at number 3. So we want to break up 90. So what we're going to do is we're going to break up 90 to be 9 and 10. So 90 breaks down to 3. 9 breaks down to 3 and 3, and 10 breaks down to 5 and 2. So then underneath the radical, I have 3 times 3 times 5 times 2. So what I can do is I can take out a pair of 3's. And when I do that, left underneath the radical, I have 5 times 2, which is 10. So this is really just 3 times the square root of 10. Now let's talk a little bit more about adding and subtracting. Radical expressions just like we did yesterday. Remember, you have to have like terms. If there's no number out in front, the number is 1. So we're taking 1 square root of 6 plus 7 square root of 6 minus 4 square root of 6. So since they're all square root of 6, we can add them all together. So we can do 1 plus 7 is 8 minus 4 is 4 square root of 6. So 4 square root of 6 is our final answer for number 5. Taking a look at number 5, we have 4 square root of 3 minus 2 square root of 5 plus 3 square root of 3. So what we want to do is we want to add our like terms. So we have 4 plus 3 is going to give us 7. And remember when I add them together that the square root of 3 stays the same. And then we're going to have minus 2 square root of 5. So that's what we talked about on your previous note sheet. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at some more in-depth part. So now not only are we going to be adding and subtracting radicals, but we're going to have to simplify them first. So we're going to have to pull out the perfect squares, and then we're going to be able to combine the radicals like we did before. So the first thing I have to do is simplify, kind of like we did on problems 1 through 3. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at what that looks like. So we want to break down 72 and 50. So I'm going to go ahead and make these a little bit bigger. Okay, so I want to break down 72 and 50. So how do I break down 72? Well, I can break that down into 9 and 8. Well, 9 I can break down to 3 and 3. 8 I can break down to 4 and 2. And the 4 itself is going to break down to 2 and 2. So for the square root of 72, I'm going to have the square root of 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. Then I also want to break down the square root of 50. Well, I know that 25 goes into 50, so I'm going to do 25 and 2. And 25 breaks down to 5 and 5. So then I'm going to be adding that to the square root of 2 times 5 times 5. Okay, so then here I have a pair of 2's and a pair of 3's. So I'm going to have 2 times 3 on the outside and then left with radical 2. Out of the next one, I have a pair of 5s that I can take out. So that's going to be 5 and then the square root of 2. So simplifying this down even further, I'm going to have 2 times 3 is 6. So I'm going to have 6 square root of 2 plus 5 square root of 2. Now that I have them both as the square root of 2, I can go ahead and add them like I did before. 6 plus 5 is 11. So we end up getting 11 square root of 2 for our final answer for number 6. Let's take a look at number 7. So we need to break down 192. So I took 192 and I divided it by 4. And I found out that that works out to be 4 and 48. So 4 I can break down to 2 and 2. 42 I can break down, or 48, sorry, I can break down to 6 and 8. Well, 6 breaks down to 2 and 3. 8 breaks down to 2 and 4. So then we want to go ahead and break down that 4 into 2 and 2. So then here are all my ends, right there, right there, right there, right there, right there, right there, right there. So let's go ahead and let's put that all underneath one radical. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 2's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 2's, and 1, 3 for your final, or for that one. Then for 75, again, I know that 25 goes into 75. So I'm going to break that down to be 25 and 3. So we're going to be subtracting the square root, because 25 breaks down to 5 and 5, of 3 times 5 times 5. So now I want to go ahead and find my pairs. So I have a pair here, a pair here, and a pair here. Okay, I think I'm missing a 2 somewhere. Oh, I'm missing this 2. So this actually has another pair of 2's. That was my fault. So I have 3 pairs of 2's. 1, 2, 3 pairs of 2's, then left underneath the radical is 3. For the second one, I have 1 pair of 5's, then left underneath the radical is 3. Well, 2 times 2 times 2 square root of 3 is going to be 8 square root of 3 minus 5 square root of 3. Well, 8 minus 5 is going to give us 3 square root of 3. So this is our final answer for number 7. Let's take a look at number 8. It's going to be the same thing. Well, for number 8, the 4 square root of 3 can't be simplified down anymore, but the square root of 27 can. So I'm going to break down 27 into 9 and 3, and 9 I can break down to 3 and 3. So then that 4 square root of 3 is going to stay the same, and then I'm going to subtract, and I can take out a pair of 3's, which I'm just going to write out here. So I have 3 3's, and I'm going to be taking out a pair of 3's. So then I have 4 square root of 3 minus 3 square root of 3. So now, because they both have square root of 3, I can subtract 4 minus 3. Well, that's just going to be 1 square root of 3. Now remember that 1 square root of 3 is really just the square root of 3. We don't have to write that 1 out there. So this is your final answer for number 8. Taking a look at number 9, we can break down 18. So we have 9 and 2, and then we have 3 and 3. So then we have 2, and then the square root of 2 times 3 times 3 plus the square root of 2. So again, out of that next one, I can take out a pair of 3's. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to get 2 times 3, and then left underneath the radical is 2, and then I have square root of 2. Well, 2 times 3 is going to be 6. So I have 6 square root of 2 plus the square root of 2. Now remember that the square root of 2 is really just 1 plus the square root of 2. So when I add those two together, I get 7 square root of 2 as my final answer for number 9. Let's take a look at number 10 and number 11. So for number 10, we want to take and we want to add some of those out. Well, the square root of 5 I'm not going to be able to do much with, but I can do stuff with the other ones. So let's go ahead and let's take a look now at, oh, this is really not working well for me. Let's take a look at number 10. So for number 10, we can break down 125. So 125 is going to be divisible by 25. So when you divide it by 25, you end up getting 5. So it's 25 and 5, and then that 25 I can break down to 5 and 5. So then underneath the radical, I have 5 times 5 times 5. Then this next term is going to stay the same. There's nothing I can do about it. Then 45 I can break down into 9 and 5. And then 9 I can break down to 3 and 3. So then underneath the radical, I'm going to have 3 times 3 times 5. So out of this first radical, I can take out a pair of 5s. So then I have 5 square root of 5. Then I'm going to keep that 4 square root of 5 the same. Then out of my second group, I can take out a pair of 3s. So I'm going to have plus 3 square root of 5. And now I can add all of those together. 5 plus 4 plus 3, that's going to give me 12 square root of 5. And that's my final answer for number 10. Next, let's take a look at number 12. So for 12, I can break down to 4 and 3. And then I'm going to take that 4 and I'm going to break it down to 2 and 2. So then I'm going to have 2 times the square root of 2 times 3. And then I want to break down 27, which I can break down to 9 and 3. And then that 9 I can break down to 3 and 3. So that's going to be minus 3 times the square root of 3 times 3 times 3. Then for 48, I can break that down to 6 and 8. 6 I can break down to 2 and 3. 8 I can break down to 4 and 2. And then 4 I can break down to 2 and 2. So I'm just going to add that on the next line here because I kind of ran out of space. So I have that 2 on the outside. Then underneath the radical, I have 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So I have 4 2's and then a 3. So let's go ahead and let's find some pairs. So here I can take out a pair of 2's. So I have 2 times 2 radical 3. Then out of my next group, I can take a pair of 3's. So then I have 3 times 3 radical 3. And then I have 2 pairs of 2's that I can take out. And then I'm going to get 2 times 2 times 2, and then I'm going to have radical 3. So what I end up getting then is 4 square root of 3 plus 9 square root of 3 plus 8 square root of 3 when I multiply all of those together. And this should actually be a minus 9 square root of 3. I lost that in the mix there. So 4 minus 9 is negative 5. And then we're going to add 8. And that is going to give us, oops, I'm sorry, yep, and that's going to give us 3 square root of 3. Mrs. Humbert had a little brain fart there. Alrighty. So next, let's go ahead and let's take a look at number 12. So these are our last two coming up here. So what we want to do is go ahead and simplify each of these radicals down. So on the first one, let's break down 18. Well, 18 we always break into 9 and 2, and then we break the 9 down to 3 and 3. So then we're going to take and we're going to write that out underneath the radical. So we're going to have 2 times 3 times 3. Then 8 we can break down to being 4 and 2, and then we can break the 4 down to being 2 and 2. So then we're going to have 3 on the outside, and then we're going to have 3 2's underneath. 2 times 2 times 2. Oops, I apparently needed to write a 3. Correct that here in a second. There we go. Okay, so 24 I can break down to 6 and 4. And 4 breaks down to 2 and 2, and 6 breaks down to 2 and 3. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write that underneath. So the square root of, then I'm going to have 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. So then, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and simplify this out. So out of the first group, I could take out a 3. So I'm going to have negative 3 times the pair of 3's that I'm taking out, and left underneath the radical is 2. Then out of this second group, I am going to take out a pair of 2's, so that I'm going to have 3 times 2 and then radical 2. And then out of this next group, all I can do is take out a pair of 2's, so that's going to be minus 2 times the square root of 2 times 3, which is 6. So then I'm going to have negative 3 times 3 is negative 9 square root of 2 plus 6 square root of 2 minus 2 square root of 6. So all I can do right now is add the terms that are alike. Okay, so all I can do is add those two square root of 2 terms. So negative 9 plus 6 is negative 3. So I have negative 3 square root of 2 minus 2 square root of 6. So that's my final answer for number 12. Next, let's take a look at number 13. So I can break down 20 into 4 and 5, and then 4 is going to break down to 2 and 2. I can't break down the square root of 5 anymore. So I'm going to have negative 3 times the square root of 2 times 5, and then minus the square root of 5. So then I know I can take out a pair of 2's. So I have negative 3 times 2 square root of 5 minus the square root of 5. So negative 3 times 2 is a negative 6 square root of 5 minus the square root of 5. So when I subtract those out, I end up getting negative 7 square root of 5 as my final answer for number 13. So that concludes your note video today. So go ahead and show me your completed note sheet when you're done. Thanks for listening.